and they followed him when he visited his children. They hadn't seen his children for 20 days, and he would go and visit them because he was so busy with this thing. And I almost cried because when he saw his kids, he wanted to give them something because obviously he's a dad, isn't it? And what did he give them? Shekel. Can you imagine that? Just think of that for a second. Just for a second. You're being bombed by the Israelis. And in the middle of that, you're still using their currency? What level of humiliation is that? I mean, just think about it for a second. What level of humiliation that the same people who are killing you, you're forced to use their currency?
Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tekka Talks. Today we have with us our guest Muawiyah Tekka, who is a renowned educator in Islamic law, Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain technology. He has a degree in Islamic law from the Islamic University of Medina. He has been teaching Arabic, Islamic studies, and computing since 2006. Muawiyah has authored books on Arabic, Quranic reading, Islamic theology, and fiqh. He delved into Bitcoin in 2016 and since 2021 has been creating videos to educate Muslims on Bitcoin from an Islamic perspective. He's an active participant in the crypto space, contributing to workshops, authoring white papers, and building businesses, including a Bitcoin-based marketplace and a peer-to-peer charitable donations project. So welcome, Muawiyah. And so that was the official biography. Tell us what the unofficial biography is.
Well, thanks for having me, Alhamdulillah. I'm glad to be here. I'm always happy to talk about Bitcoin. It's one of my passions of my life, and that's interesting because I think my primary passion actually before Bitcoin or before I even heard about Bitcoin was to exit or to find avenues to escape Riba and to escape the banks. So that was kind of that was my thing back in 2011, 12. I went through a phase of being a quite a heavy gold bug, saying that we should return back to the old standard and leave off the banks. But obviously at the time, um, you could say the ideology was there, the intentions were there, but the knowledge, the practicality of that wasn't really well thought out at the time. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could return to a life of how it was before. But the problem with that ideology or that mentality is that it ignores how much we've progressed. I mean, it'd be nice if, we can go back to the old days and have our own little hut and have our a mazra'ah, have a little farm and have our little date palm trees and whatnot. But we have cars now, we have buildings and planes, things have changed. So to say I want to go back to the old, that's ignoring what blessing Allah has given us today. So yes, acknowledged, gold has history to it. We've accepted it as money, but it's not realistic to use that in the modern day life. I might need to transact, do business, send, receive money across long distances. Effectively, you could say the changing point here, or I would say the factor which makes gold, you could say, outdated as a form of money. As a store of value, fair enough, but as a form of money is telecommunication, the ability to communicate over long distances. Before we had the telegram or the telephone and the telegram, if I wanted to send you a contract and a deal, I couldn't get that information to you faster than I can get the gold to you. I mean, it would be the same. If I sent you a letter, I could send the gold at the same time. So as you receive the message, you can receive the transaction or something like that. Whereas from the telegram, now you can receive information instantly or relatively instantly. So because of that detachment, effectively, commerce became detached from physicality. I can now do commerce long distance instantly. So that made the reality of using gold as money challenging, to say the least. And that's why we we started using to bridge that gap, credit. So I owe you, basically. We can conclude the deal, we can finalize the deal, and we can peg that deal to credit. I owe you, I'll deliver it at a later date. Or I have a friend who he can give you the money and I can pay him back later. We found ways around the limitation of the physicality of gold through credit. But unfortunately, that morphed and manifested itself into our current Riba system, whereby everything is by credit, everything is by interest. So essentially, my intention in 2010, 11, 12 was I wanted to return to the old ways. I wanted to leave off the credit, but I didn't really realize that well, maybe I did realize, but I didn't really factor in the the limitations of gold. So it never really manifested as anything other than a store of value. Any gold bug will tell you that. They'll say, yeah, we have gold, but effectively all they're really saying is buy the gold, put it into a drawer, and leave it there until some date in the future where you need to convert it back to fiat. They haven't actually addressed the elephant in the room. But when Bitcoin came along, well, I knew about Bitcoin from before that, and I think I used to think that I first got into Bitcoin uh, or first heard about Bitcoin in 2017 because 2017 was the time when I integrated payments into my website. Because obviously I teach Arabic and Islamic studies and also for kids. So I wanted to integrate payments as an additional option. It wasn't like at the time to replace it because obviously people didn't know about it. But yeah, I wanted to at least have the option. So I integrated it into my website. I bought some Bitcoin off of Coinbase. I figured out how to do that. And I used it to do a test transaction on my website and it worked. I thought, alhamdulillah, I've got some Bitcoin and I've tested the website. So if anyone wants to pay me in Bitcoin, then they could. I mean, obviously, needless to say, no one did at the time. That was still very early, but it existed. But ironically, years later, as I was going through my phone, deleting old videos, I discovered in 2016, which is the year before that, I had done a screen recording of Jazeera, which is ironic. Jazeera was talking, they had a little 5 minute clip or 5 minute video explaining what Bitcoin was on Jazeera. And for some reason, I had recorded that. So I wanted to keep that. So I had known about it from before 2017, but obviously I didn't do anything about it. But so yeah, that was the beginnings of my journey, 16,
Very
17.
cool.
And
He-
since then, I've been teaching.
Interesting. I'd love to dig a little bit more on the payment gateway that you've been able to do with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. But before I go into that, can you demystify a little bit, Bitcoin among, a lot of Muslim and a lot of Muslim countries actually have had some issue regarding cryptocurrency in general, not necessarily Bitcoin, but or even sometimes they're like, oh, but Bitcoin, is it okay to use? Oh, my local scholar or my is warning me against it. I would love to hear a little bit where did we progress and how people are more reactive because you're more on the road and talking to more congregation now. I'm sure that things have been changing a lot since
Um,
you started. Yeah.
sorry, if you would permit me, I'd like to actually take a step back and before we start talking about Bitcoin, maybe to just talk about you had mentioned, you wanted to be a gold bug because you felt that something was inherently wrong with the financial system, and you've explained it to some extent. But am I correct to understand that what you're saying is the fiat system is essentially a credit system that is based on riba and interest, and can you actually speak to that and why it was important for you to leave that system?
We'll be right back after the break.
Tekka Talks brings you stories from around the world that will help you understand how crypto and Islamic finance can change our lives for the better. Subscribe and follow us to keep learning.
Yeah, so that is actually the I'll say the crux of the matter. That's actually the most important point that people need to talk about because it kind of answers both your questions. So a lot of the scholars who object to Bitcoin, one of the things I've said in my reply to that is that these objections towards Bitcoin seem to be devoid of a discussion about fiat. And actually, it's intrinsically attached to that discussion. So, for the sake of argument, if I'll steelman the argument, I'll say, yeah, the Bitcoin has problems, Bitcoin is not necessarily halal, blah. Let's just say that, yeah, for the sake of argument, yes, Bitcoin has problems, Islamically speaking. The problems with Bitcoin is not greater than the problems with fiat. Actually, it's a lot less. So, from the aspect of Islamic law and principles, what we are supposed to do in Islam is, if you have two things that are haram, two things are haram, and this is on the premise, the assumption, if I was to agree for the sake of argument that Bitcoin is haram, if you have two things that are haram, then you must take the less of the two evils. So the question now is, if you want to speak against Bitcoin, we have to first acknowledge, is fiat even allowed? Are we allowed to engage in the fiat system? Because if we're not allowed to do that, and we have Bitcoin, then actually the question should be, which one should we favor? Which one should we be going towards? So the question is fiat even halal? I'm not going to answer that question for you. I'm just going to describe the system, and you can answer it yourself. Because it's actually quite straightforward. It's very, very straightforward. So fiat money or paper money or currencies that we have, the dollar, the yen, the whatever, how do they come into existence? How do you get it? There are two ways. But essentially, both of those ways comes down to a loan. So I go to the bank. I say I want to buy a home. They say, where's the home? One over there. How much does it cost? £100,000. Great. Put down a deposit, 20,000. We'll give you the remaining 80,000. Fine. I sign the contracts, do the deal, get the keys to the property. The owner of the house receives the full 100,000. My 20 plus the bank's 80, and then I just keep up with the mortgage payments. We all know this. We know that's haram. We know that it's interest and blah. We all know how mortgages work. But what most people don't realize or don't know is that the £80,000 that the bank gave to the homeowner was created just there. It didn't exist before the transaction. Before I went to the bank, there was no £80,000 there. They used your desire to have a home to create new money. So when I say that fiat is intrinsically attached to riba, you can clearly see it right here and then. Meaning, if everyone on planet Earth was to say no more riba, we're not going to do any more transactions in riba, we're not going to do no mortgages, no hire purchase, no nothing. We'll pay back our debts and that. Fiat would disappear because there's no mechanism to create new fiat. Even if governments were to print, which is most people think that fiat is mainly created through printing. Even that printing, one way of doing the most common way of doing so is again through loans, through what's called government bonds. The government would issue a bond, a loan. Someone on the market would purchase that, and then they would have. That's how they would get more money and so on. So they issue bonds. So again, even with the creation of fiat, it cannot exist. There's no mechanism for it to exist except through interest-bearing loans. For the most part, I mean, for the most part, yeah. So, if that is the case, if we as Muslims want to have a system that doesn't involve any interest whatsoever, by necessity, that means we have to have a system other than fiat. There's no other way. Even Islamic banks that exist, they still exist within that same paradigm. They still issue newly created money through loans that they give out to people. However way they want to dress it up and change the words, it's the same mechanism of money creation. And that's it really. That's the premise. So the reason why I said I want to exit the banks is that we all know intrinsically that riba, interest, is haram. We think, Muslims, that the way we fight riba or we exit riba is by not taking out loans. What we don't realize is that the sheer fact of having money, especially keeping it in the bank account, you're still engaged in it. You're still in that system. There's no way to escape it. There's no way to escape it. So that's why I said that I've always believed that Muslims should find a way out of that system. Now, I guess the question would be, is Bitcoin the answer? Well, if I was to be honest and non-biased, I am biased towards Bitcoin, obviously, but if I was to just be non-biased, the non-biased answer would be, however way you do it, just do it. If you want to use gold, do gold. If you want to use silver, do silver. However mechanism you want to exit the system, exit. But if you look at all the properties of gold and silver and Bitcoin and all alternatives that exist, Bitcoin just happens to be the best alternative. So it's perfectly fine to use all other alternatives, but realistically, Bitcoin is the best alternative. And best from many, many different ways and avenues, which we'll probably discuss later on, but it's effectively Bitcoin is the best alternative we have of a fair monetary system that can be used globally, non-biased to everyone. And I'm not non-biased. I've heard some Muslims say, "Oh, we should have a Muslim coin, or a Islam coin, or we have a Sharia coin, or dinar or dirham, or digital dinar and dirham to serve the Muslims." And as nice as that sounds, realistically, it's again naive, because as Muslims, part of da'wah is engaging with the kuffar. So you can't really say I want to engage with the non-Muslims whilst telling them we're going to have our own Islamic coin and force the whole world to accept the Islamic coin. We're not in a position to do that. And to be honest, there's no reason why we have to. I mean, why would there's nothing in Islam which dictates you have to have an Islamic coin. All you need to have is a fair coin it treats everyone equally. Whether you're Scottish, you're Nigerian, whether you're Latin American, it doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're a man or woman, child or adult, or even robot, if it is a mechanism for you to use the money on an even playing field. That's all that's really required, Islamic speaking, of money. So I guess that kind of answers your question in brief about the problems with the current system, and it goes more deeper than that. It goes a lot more deeper than that. I mean, we can even discuss about how fiat is used to enslave people, to oppress people. I mean, I'll give you one example, just one example. And this is, I advise you guys to, whoever watching this on YouTube, go on YouTube, search for the name Alex Gladstein. He's got a podcast about Palestine. It's about 2 years old now. And he's talking about how Palestine, he made many things about Palestine, but how Palestine effectively is not only occupied physically by the Israelis, it's also financially occupied. And he goes into detail about how the Israelis use the shekel to subdue the Palestinians. We think that we see them with guns and pushing people around in the streets is oppression. We don't actually recognize the financial oppression they're also in. But ironically, just the other day, I watched a small video on Al Jazeera following one ambulance driver in Gaza right now.
We'll be right back after the break.
We believe that the financial system is broken and that our banks and insurance companies don't have our best interests at heart. We've built Takaturn to help us get together as a community to save, earn, and access credit. Join us today and discover how you can grow your savings while helping others.
Right now. And they followed him when he visiting his children. They hadn't seen his children for 20 days. I went to go and visit them because he was so busy with this thing. And I almost cried because when he saw his kids, he wanted to give them something because obviously he's a dad, isn't it? And what did he give them? Shekel. Can you imagine that? Just think of that for a second. Just for a second. You're being bombed by the Israelis. And in the middle of that, you're still using their currency? What level of humiliation is that? I mean, just think about it for a second. What level of humiliation that the same people who are killing you, you're forced to use their currency. So that's just the case of why fiat is something we as Muslims have to have an alternative. We can argue about halal and haram all day long, but if you're not actively finding a solution, I'm not interested in having a discussion with you. That's just my position. Any scholar who says to me, "Oh, Bitcoin, is it got intrinsic value or not?" look, if you haven't got a solution for me, then our conversation is over. Because unless you find something better than fiat that follows your criterion, then we have no discussion. So I guess that kind of answers that one. And I guess the second question was with regards to the issue of the halal and the haram. I mean, the discussion of the halal and the haram is actually quite long, but hopefully I can condense it into like a 1-2 minute elevator pitch. And that begins by explaining what the issue is, why people have issues with Bitcoin. And it comes down to paradigm. So if you look throughout history as to what money is, or how Muslims have dealt with money for 1,400 years, it's always revolved around gold. All the fatwa, all the books of fiqh, everything else revolves around the physicality of gold, or even copper coins or whatnot. It all refers to this because that's how it was. You exchange things because it actually existed. And you could say that the physics of that, when I say physics, as in the atoms and the electrons, the physics of the atoms of the gold gave it a level of verification. Meaning, if I was to say, yeah, I want to have my Muawiyah coin, how do I verify anything about my claims of it being anything, for example? How do I verify it? How do I even, establish its properties? Because if I just did something, I can change it as I want because I control it. Whereas gold, because it physically exists, because I physically don't have the ability to wish it into existence, the physicality gives it properties which makes it useful as money. And that's how it's always been. Now we have this invention by Satoshi Nakamoto, which actually, people say invention. It's interesting how you can call it an invention because Satoshi actually didn't invent anything new. What Satoshi did was put together pieces that already existed. That's what Satoshi did. That was the innovation. He got things that already existed and packaged it together in a system which worked. But what he achieved, and this is a turning point, which is way to understand. What he achieved was digital scarcity. Because I can't wish gold into existence, that gave gold inherent scarcity. I can't just wish it into existence. You have to actually go out and earn it. Go to a mountain, mine the ore, purify the gold from the ore, other things. You have to actually do something. But because of that, there's limitations in gold. There's only so much gold on planet Earth. There's only so much work you can do to get gold. So there are already inherent limitations to gold. On the contrast, information, there are limitations. I can send you a photo of myself. Now you have a copy. I have a copy. You have a copy, and you can put it on the internet. Others can copy. There's no limitations of copying that picture. There's no scarcity really. And that's what makes digital money not feasible, not viable, because there is no scarcity involved. Until Bitcoin. When Bitcoin came about, that was the first time in history of mankind where we had digital scarcity, where information was actually scarce. Whereby when I give you the Bitcoin, now you have it, and I don't have it. And there's no way to counterfeit it. There's no way to just wish it into existence. It has a inherent inbound limit. So it imitates the properties of gold. So to get back to the point of why people have had issues with it, or scholars have had issues with it, is because that is a very new concept. We've never had that before. So it's just a case of understanding that. Those who understand it, their fatwa is different. And that's why if you look at other ulama who said it's halal, some of them have actually said that. Like Abdurrahman al-Barrak, Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Barrak, he mentioned in his fatwa that he used to have issues with Bitcoin. But under further investigation, he realized that his objections weren't really objections. So he didn't change his principles. He hasn't changed his ideology. He just gained more knowledge about how it worked. That's it. So that's why my position is that all scholars on planet Earth will agree at some point that Bitcoin is money. Bitcoin is halal to send and receive and own and whatnot. They will, once that knowledge is, comes into play. Once I have that knowledge, it's just the issue of education, fundamentally, and that's I would say the easiest way to explain the whole halal haram conversation is that it comes down to knowledge of it, and that's why. And just to conclude, because I know I speak a lot. That's why if any person who was to read the fatwa of those who object to Bitcoin, you don't have to have a special degree in Islamic knowledge. You don't have to have anything special. Just as a normal layman, if you just read the fatwa of the scholars about Bitcoin, and then you find out how Bitcoin actually works, you will see yourself that the fatwa is not applicable. You don't need any special knowledge. I mean, I know I've got a degree in Islamic knowledge, in Sharia, so I have an advantage. Also, I have a tech background, so I have an advantage there as well. I get that. What I'm trying to say specifically is that the reason why these fatwa are not valid is because they are describing something else. It's like saying all bottles like this are haram because it makes you drunk. And then you say, Sheikh, but it doesn't. It's only water. I'm not saying the Sheikh his knowledge is wrong. I'm saying his knowledge of the Sharia is wrong. His knowledge of the Sharia is correct. But his knowledge of the waqi', his knowledge of the reality is incorrect. That's all it is. It's just knowledge of the waqi', of the reality. That's all it is.
Now that you've brought it up, and actually I was planning to bring it up because I think this is a good platform to help people demystify it, to help people understand. And I know that, if you understand Bitcoin, like you said, all the fatwa doesn't make sense, but let's assume people will have a steep learning curve. So let's help them learn. So let's deal with the objections of the scholars one at a time, and let's break it down. So one of the objections is one of two things. It's either who is it owned by? It's owned by the wrong people, or it's owned by no one, which means it's backed by no one. And this is one of the objections. How do you respond?
So the issue of backing, if I was to summarize the objection, it'd be the issue of backing. And again, the best way to understand all the objections is that it's mostly a misunderstanding of the situation. So backing, I agree, that the backing of an asset is important. I agree that the objection is valid, but the caveat here is that it doesn't apply to Bitcoin. It applies to fiat. Okay, then what do I mean by that? Fiat currency effectively has value because, quote unquote, it's backed by the government. Because without that government backing, without that government promise, it's just paper. Yeah, it's without that promise, just paper. Meaning, the paper itself has no inherent scarcity. Listen carefully. Let me take a step back. Gold. If I said to you, does gold need backing? You say no. I'd say why? Because gold has properties within the gold that doesn't require backing. It has inherent scarcity. Fiat, on the other hand, being just printed paper or numbers on a screen, has no inherent scarcity. I mean, I think I said the statistic now is that the money that the US government has printed since January this year is 60% of all dollars that exist. Just think of that for 1 second. In less than 12 months, 60% of all the dollars that are in circulation was printed recently. That's from the beginning of when a dollar existed. And we know for a fact, without anyone arguing, whether you're a fiat bug or gold bug or a Bitcoin maximalist, everyone agrees that next year they're going to print some more. If I said to you, how much are you going to print? We have no idea. Whatever they need, they just print. That's the whole purpose. The whole point of fiat is that it allows you to print. That's why governments fight so hard to keep that right, because it allows them to do what they want to do. For example, Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned just recently to the Israeli people, because obviously 300,000 normal everyday people were just drafted to go and fight in Gaza. So there's a lot of people who are not in work that were in work. Businesses are failing, people are struggling, and whatnot. So he said, "Don't worry, the government we will fund and give you, you could say, funding to help you through this time." How did he do that? How could he even say that? Because you can print. The sheer fact that you can just invent money gives you certain privileges that you can't do otherwise. And that's why many people say advocate that Bitcoin actually has properties within it that will stop wars. Why? Because in the past, I mean, wars have always existed. So that's why I don't believe that that's 100% true. People, they say defund wars with Bitcoin. I don't believe it's 100% true. But what they mean by that really is that if you do want to go to war, you have to actually calculate that and pay for it. And there's only so much money you have to pay for it. Many times in the past, before fiat, wars ended because there was no more money. You had to negotiate. You were forced to negotiate because there's no more money left. They'll either go bankrupt or you think of something else. Because of limited scarcity of money, you had to think deeply. Is it worth it? I mean, even look at the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he went to go and fight the Battle of Tabuk. What did he do? He asked the Sahaba to donate. And then Uthman came and donated and funded the Battle of Tabuk. Without Uthman, there would be no Battle of Tabuk. So because of that inherent scarcity of money, it means that war has to be really worth it. But with fiat, you can draw money from the future. That's effectively how fiat works, or how credit works. I can pay you in credit. I can just say to you, I can fight wars going on and on and on and on and on. All I can do is draw money from the future. Just take more money out and print more money. I'm drawing money from the future. Whereas with fiat, with Bitcoin, you have to actually have it first before you can even engage in it. So anyway, I'm going off tangent a bit. Back to the issue of intrinsic value, of backing. So back to the issue of fiat. So fiat needs to have a backing, because without that backing, it has no inherent properties that makes it worth anything, because I can always just print. Bitcoin, on the other hand, has, like I said, inherent scarcity, and that's the same properties that has with gold. So the idea that it requires a backing is thinking of Bitcoin as fiat. Because fiat is digital, people are making parallels. Okay, if fiat is digital and it has backing, and so it requires backing to be legal, and you have Bitcoin, which is also digital, where's the backing? But that's the problem. They're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. They're completely separate. Bitcoin has properties, or all the properties that we value in gold. It also exists in Bitcoin. So that's why it's a they say in Arabic, in Islamic law, al-qiyas al-fad. It's an analogy with something that is different. It's not the same thing. So my argument would be that Bitcoin doesn't need backing because it has value in and of itself. Which I guess will bring you to your second question. I'm probably going to have objective would be intrinsic value. That's probably one of your questions. What's the intrinsic value of Bitcoin? I'm just jumping the gun here. And again, that's another issue with changing times. So people say to me, Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. What they mean by that is gold has intrinsic value. So what does that even mean, intrinsic value? They say that gold, here, let's say this is gold. This piece of gold here, this gold nugget here, has value in itself. Whereas Bitcoin has no physicality, so therefore it has no intrinsic value. What they fail to realize, though, is that there is no value in gold. Listen carefully, everyone. There is no value in gold. So gold buggers will say to me, Astaghfirullah, how can you say that? Or if they're Muslim, they'll say Astaghfirullah. But they say, how can you say that God has no intrinsic value? We all know God has intrinsic value. And again, this is looking at it from an old paradigm, an old way of viewing the world, which doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily valid anymore. It's updated. Okay, what do I mean by that? Okay, let me explain what I mean. gold has properties. Oh, sorry. Let me ask a question. The first question to challenge the ideology of intrinsic value is the question would be, if every human being on planet Earth was to die, let's just say that the angel who's in charge of blowing the trumpet and causing everything to die blows the trumpet. We're all dead now. What's the value of gold then? None. Because there's no one there to value it. So if the value of gold depends on our existence, then maybe the value comes from us. So back to my point now. Let's go back to the gold. Gold has properties. It has a color, it has a weight, it has scarcity, it has history. It has so many things. It's soft, it's malleable, it has so many things. And these properties, we value it. As in, it's useful for this, it's useful for that. I want to do X, Y, Z, and gold is a thing to use it for. So it has properties that we value. So the properties are intrinsic, but the value part comes from us. Because if I had another element, let's just say I've got now this new element I've made, brand new element that imitates gold 100%. It's not the same as gold. It's not the same atomic structure, but it imitates everything about gold 100%, except that it's cheaper. Would gold be the same? Oh, it would change because I no longer value this. Why would I pick up this heavy piece of metal and use this exact same thing? That's the one way of demonetizing gold. I mean, that's actually what happens. So that's the point, is that we value properties and what we can do with things. So fast forward now to 2009, where now Bitcoin exists. We can now analyze, does Bitcoin have properties? Yes, it does. Are these properties useful to us? Yes, it is. Do I value those properties? Yes, I do. So can I say now that Bitcoin has intrinsic value? Yes, I can. But it has no physical essence. Yeah, no. But it doesn't mean that it has no properties. It does. And that answers the question of intrinsic value. If you just replace the word intrinsic value to refer to the physical thing and now understand it as being, it has properties that we value, your questions will be answered. So what properties does Bitcoin have that we value? Scarcity is one. I mean, in a world where governments print and print and print and print whenever they want, maybe some people want actually an asset that is limited and can't be printed. Maybe. I mean, that's one thing I value Bitcoin. One of the main things I love about Bitcoin is the fact that there's no way to get it unless you earned it. Whether you're a miner, whether you're a merchant, or you're just a poor person on the street, you actually have to do something for it to be given to you or for it to be minted for you. There's no way to get it other than that. And I value that because the alternative system is bankers and government officials have privilege to print money. And we don't all have that same privilege. I can't print money. If I do so, I'll go to jail. Whereas they have privilege to print money and make money from it. Banks actually have the legal right to invent new capital and make money from them. And if I did the same, I'll go to jail. I don't think that's a fair system. I think that's a very unfair system. So I value something that levels the playing field. Anyone can go and buy a mining machine and plug it into the wall and mine Bitcoin. That's it. That's the only requirement, is that you do physical effort to get the device, mine the Bitcoin, and it's now yours. You've earned it. You spend money, you spend effort, you spend time, and now you've mined Bitcoin. That's a beautiful system. Anyone can do it. You could be Russian, you could be Saudi, you could be British, you could be anything you want. You have the right to mine Bitcoin. I think that's a fair. So that's one of many, many properties of Bitcoin that I value, and because of that, I'm prepared to throw away my fiat and use Bitcoin instead. So that hopefully should that's actually why I say to people, when people say to me, "Brother, should I buy Bitcoin?" I always say to them, "No, don't. Find in Bitcoin that which you value, and then you know the answer to that question yourself." Because if you ask me, should you buy Bitcoin, that's based on my values and how I value the thing. But you might not agree with me, so that's up to you. Maybe you don't. Maybe you think Bitcoin is useless and worthless, and why would you buy it then? Buy some my recommendation? That's silly. No, learn about Bitcoin. Find inside Bitcoin that which you are impressed with, that which you like and love, and therefore you would answer your own question. You'd be like, oh, should I buy Bitcoin? Well, of course I should. Why would I not do that? I can transact anywhere across the world. It is borderless. I can do so. No one can stop me. No one can ask me questions. Oh, who are you sending money to? Why are you sending me money? Like how banks do. None of that. I just get an address, put it to my wallet, press send, and you have the money. I value that. I love that freedom. So these are things that I value. You need to find things in yourself that you value. And then you would answer that question yourself about intrinsic value because you see the value. It's right there.
No, that was very good, and keep it long. I think you're going into the depth that we need right now. So moving on to the next question. It's too volatile and it's speculative.
Yeah. So the volatility and speculation, again, that's unfortunately a byproduct of, let's say. So essentially, or actually, let me take a step back. My counter question would be: Does currency has currency ever been not volatile? Meaning, people say so the currency should be stable, but has that always been the case? And I've argued that maybe not actually, because if you actually look historically speaking, we've always had volatility. Even during the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we had volatility. We have a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where the companions came to him and said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, the price of everything's gone up. So please fix the prices for us." And then he answered and whatnot. But the point in that hadith is that it reveals that the price of things wasn't stagnant, wasn't the same thing. It changed. Sometimes it was this price, sometimes it was that price. So things are volatile. And that's because, listen carefully everyone, perception of value isn't fixed. Listen carefully everyone. The perception of value is not a fixed thing. Value is not a fixed thing that way. So to assume stability is a fallacy. Meaning, I'll give you an example. You're gonna love this. Those of you from my generation, you might understand this. When I was young, we had this game in the arcade called Street Fighter. You go in there and you put your coins in and you play Street Fighter, and it'd be like 20 pence, 50 pence a game. And I remember when I was young, going with my friends to the arcade and we were playing these games. You know, we wished we could have our own arcade in our own home. We would probably do anything for that. Fast forward like 20 years. Now those same games you can just download from the internet. I remember I did that. I all my, the nostalgia. I got all these games I used to play when I was young. Street Fighter and this game, Mortal Kombat. I downloaded all these games on my computer, thinking I'm gonna have relive my youth. Did I play those games? Not really, because I had them all. When I had one game, that the value of that game was just so much. I gave all my time and effort. It was my precious, my prize thing. When I had hundreds of games, I didn't bother because there was I intrinsically the value of them was diminished. We see it all the time. We see it all the time. That's actually why, or one of the reasons why diamonds are worth what they're worth, because there actually is a cartel that deliberately keeps the amount of diamonds in circulation as low. As in those who mine diamonds, some of those diamonds they keep locked in vaults. They don't put it on the market because of supply and demand. So back to the issue of the question of volatility, currencies of today, most of them, are not stable because that's how currencies are. They are stable because they are made to be stable, meaning that when there is instability, they do efforts to stabilize it. For example, just ask yourself a question. How is it the Rial, the Saudi Rial or the Emirati dinar, how is it pegged to the dollar? I used to wonder to myself, how is it pegged to the dollar? How do you peg it? I used to think that they'll probably buy an X amount of dollars and then they'll just have 1-to-1 ratio of dollars. That's how they'll do it. That's not how it works. And if you go to the charts, the price chart of dinar and dirham, you see like a line because it's the same minute, it's pegged, it's the same value. But if you just zoom in, as in zoom in, you actually find that it's not the same. It goes up and down a lot. It goes up and down, up and down. It goes down. It goes up and goes down. Goes up. But when you see that, the next question is, but why does it go up and down in this very tight range? Because there are people who it's their job that when it goes down a certain level, they buy. When it goes up, they sell. They use capital that they have, both dollars and reals or whatever, and they deliberately manipulate the market to be stable. That's why some countries, they lose the peg. Like Switzerland, it happened once with Switzerland. It happened with Pakistan the other day. It happened with Egypt this year or last
Lebanon,
year.
definitely.
Well, Lebanon's different because Lebanon wasn't trying to maintain a peg as far as I'm aware. But what I'm saying is that you see a chart whereby it will be stable, and then all of a sudden it will just drop to another level. What it means is that the central bank decided to not maintain that peg. I mean, it was costing them too much money to maintain a peg. Because remember, that they actually have to use money in their pockets to do this manipulation. So my point in saying this is that stability is an illusion given to us by central bankers. And Bitcoin is actually real. If you want to know what an actual currency would look like in the real market, that's actually how it would look like. People will come in and they will buy when the demand is high, and the price will go up. And when the demand becomes lower, the price goes down. It's actually a reflection of human beings' perception of value. So the fact that Bitcoin is at now $37,000 is because that's what the market has perceived at its current value. And if it goes up to 50,000, 60,000, that's again a collective behavior of the perceived value. And we can go into the details about whether the movements would decrease or whatnot. But the point is to first address the issue of stability. My counter question is, who said currencies have to be stable? Or better still, who said they even can be stable? They are only stable at the moment because it's made to be stable through manipulation. But even with that, we can see, without a shadow of a doubt, without any ambiguity or bias, that even with their stability, there is a general, gradual degradation. So usually my counter argument, people say to me, oh, Bitcoin is going to go up and it go down. It probably got to zero. I always say to people, look, since Bitcoin was born in 2009, what has been the general trend? Down, up, or sideways? Just look at the chart over a long distance. Let's say it's been going up. Since it's born, it's been going up. Okay, let's look at the dollar since the 1900s. What's the general trend? Down, up, or sideways? Down. So realistically, what are we comparing here then? We have one currency which you're saying is stable, but we know 100% it would lose its value, about at least 50% in a couple of decades. We know it for a fact. It's by design. Or another currency which is not so stable, but also not by design, its value will go up. But how can we say it will go up? Because it's scarce. Listen carefully. Because it's only 21 million can ever exist. That means all 8 billion human beings on planet Earth, the more people want it, there are no more money to go around. So the value has to go up for us to use it. There's no other way around it. It's by design.
Yeah, that's mashallah. That's a great discussion. Of course, this is Muawiyah way. So we, appreciate your feedback on that. There will be other people, again. So first of all, a very interesting point, because the reason, for example, of most of the scholars even ensure that the Ummah is not left behind is, we're still, as you mentioned, dollars is dominated by the West or whatever. So for the greater maslahah, they are making fatwa for everybody to have a bank account. So they make it everything available for us, because one of the fundamental Islam, like you mentioned, is to make it easy for the people not to burden the Ummah. Now that we have this concept, beautiful way, alternative way, definitely, as you mentioned, it's really interesting to start, understanding even more and educating people more into the space. What are the gradual way, to do that? I'm sure at the government level, we have El Salvador, for example, who accepted Bitcoin as an exchange, as a backup and a way to transact, and they seem to be doing well. And we see, I see this currency or this Bitcoin being more adapted to the country of the South, where they have less opportunity for them to create their own currency, namely Sahel country, Mali, Burkina Faso. Now they are using, imagine, franc CFA was still available today. This is one of the ways that has to be adopted pretty fast in order for them to go. My question, though, when you go and talk to some of the Muslims in the financial industry that are very well aware, they're like, Murad, unfortunately, we are in the world where Bitcoin, with all its quality and benefit, doesn't fit into our, lending vehicle. And if we create a Bitcoin in their mind where there is a borrowing issue, something that we can borrow against, basically replicating the fiat model, I tell them usually, they're like, yeah, then we're interested, because in order for us to grow as a society, economy, and everything, we are like married to the, as you mentioned, the lending issue, and that's the biggest drawback for them, because they're like, when Bitcoin comes, we cannot anymore issue loan, we cannot make money out of money, and even as as some brothers like talking about it, they're like, it's going to be an issue. How do we grow our economy? How do we grow our nation? And so on and so forth. So what's your take on that?
So, generally speaking, my approach, I would say that me as a person, I'm very radical. And I guess you have to be radical to change your religion, to leave your people, change your dress, change your lifestyle, which is what I did. I was born and raised a Christian. When I came across Islam, I was like, okay, halas, Islam's way forward. That's the truth. That's how it has to be. I mean, effectively, you could say, quote unquote, I lost a lot because I had a life before I became Muslim, and my life was completely changed. Now, I could have said to myself, well, if I accept Islam, how would I do this, and how would I do this, and how would I do this, and I can't do this I wanted to do. Those are the questions that may go through people's minds. And I know people who have been like that. They've come across Islam, and the thing that prevented them from Islam, imagine that. The thing that prevented them from salvation from hellfire is considerations about their house, or their mortgage, or their girlfriend, or their job, or their whatever. Secondary things. So sometimes you have to be radical to take the leap, that even if I don't have the answers about what to do next, if it's the right thing to do it, and then find answers to those questions. This is why I'm against Islamic finance, because Islamic finance seeks to replicate. It seeks to emulate what already exists. Yeah, and when you do that, you're not pushed to answer these questions. People say, "Oh, how can I? Well, you don't have the answers because you never tried to find the answers. Same thing when people say to me, "Oh, brother, how can you live on Bitcoin? I can't pay my bills." Brother, you haven't tried to do that. I mean, how many people, even people who advocate for Bitcoin, how many of them have actually tried to pay their bills or pay their rent or do shopping in Bitcoin? They probably don't. They probably just have it and hope for it to go up in value, maybe buy a house and whatnot, but they don't actually try to actually use it. And I think so my answer to those people will be, rather than saying, I don't have the answers, and therefore ignoring it, how about you find the question would be, what should I do? Ethically, as a Muslim, what should I be doing? Once I know what I should be doing, then I can start thinking, okay, how can I now do it? Think about it. Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was in Mecca. Just for the sake of argument, just think about it. Imagine you are in Mecca. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received revelation just last year. It's only been 1 year. There was probably like 10, 12 Muslims on planet Earth. What's the likelihood of any success whatsoever of this Islam? How can we possibly fight everyone around us? What? We have Quraysh killing us, boycotting us. We're starving. We've got nothing. What chance do we have at all of doing anything? So did they say, okay, well, in that case, let's just return back to Kufr and just do what Quraysh asked us to do and done? No. They knew what they had to do and they figured it out. And they struggled. 13 years they struggled in Mecca. And it wasn't easy. And when they made Hijrah to Medina, there was still more struggles. There was famine. There was disease. There was sickness. There was death. They had tribes, actually, Arabs were warring tribes. They were always at each other's throats. But they actually united to come and invade Medina. They had these challenges to deal with, but yet they knew what they had to do and they figured it out. So for us today to say, oh, brother, we've got banks and how do we deal with our things today and how? Brother, figure it out. You can't tell me it's not possible. We have a superior currency. Fiat is inferior with all metrics and all systems. I can't send money from UK
definitely
to America without taking it. So we have already a system which is number one inferior by design. The only thing that's going for it is that everyone knows how to deal with it. That's the only thing that's going for it. Everyone knows the system. So if you want to change things, then learn, make effort. Why not? And that's why if you look at El Salvador as an example, El Salvador didn't just ditch the dollar. They did a smart move. They made Bitcoin a parallel system. If you think about it, it's a very smart move. We have the dollar as well as the Bitcoin. You want to use dollar, use dollar. Want to use Bitcoin, use Bitcoin. But don't be surprised in the next 10, 15 years where they eventually say, you know what, no more dollar. They can do that because we've had 15 years of using Bitcoin. They solved the problem by doing it slowly, by making effort. They're already at the moment having workshops teaching El Salvadorians how to use Bitcoin, how to program and build systems and economies on top of Bitcoin. They're teaching them now. They're having workshops. They're getting, I think, Mr. Song. What's his name? Oh, what's his first name? Jason Song or not? Jimmy Song. They're getting Jimmy Song, who's wrote a book on actually, give me a second. Here we go. So Jimmy Song wrote this book here, Programming Bitcoin. So it's a big book. So he's got a lot of experience teaching how to program on top of Bitcoin. So he actually has gone in El Salvador to train, have schools training people how to build on top of Bitcoin, on top of Bitcoin. So let's do a summary. El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender in 2000, I think, or 2020 or 2021. It's now been 3 years. They're still building. But slowly, they'll get in where they need to get to. And eventually, at some point, they can and probably will say, now we're doing Bitcoin only. We don't need the dollar anymore. Maybe. Not maybe, it will happen. But the dollar will die. That's a fact. So the answer to these people is that, brother, figure it out. The problem, however, is, and I'm going to be blunt, the problem is, and I'm going to be blunt, is that what's holding the Muslims back is the fact that those who are in charge benefit from the system of riba. That's the reality of it. That's the unfortunate reality of it. Because the current system of riba benefits them financially, to leave that something else that doesn't necessarily give them any privilege, that's the problem. So my only answer to that is, look, at the end of the day, you may benefit financially from the current system, and what you should do is figure out a way to benefit from another system, a more fairer system. That's it. This is something you have to figure it out. But to claim that because I don't know the answer now, therefore there is no answer, that's just naive and unfortunate. We need to be more strong and innovative. And on top of that, if you think about it, especially people who are of power and influence. If you get ahead of the game right now, if you try your best to build systems on top of Bitcoin right now, you'll be ahead of the game by years. All countries like America, China, Europe, the EU, all of them are now trying to build their own crypto, their own CBDC. If you get ahead around Bitcoin right now, you can leapfrog way ahead of them. When their CBDC eventually fails, which it will, then you already have a system which is alternative to that works and more fair and open to everyone. So yeah, I mean that's just my general answer to that one. Don't want to go on too long on one topic, but yeah, that's just one answer to that one. Yeah.
I think actually this is a good way to wrap up, because you've basically given us the recipe of, okay, what do we do next as Muslims if we want to stay away from the riba system? Murad, do you have any follow-ups to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, at this stage, we know that this currency or this blockchain solution and the Bitcoin has been there now for almost, 13 years, 14 years, okay?
Yeah, 14 years.
The biggest threat for, I would say, in the northern hemisphere, I would say in the West, they look at this currency, in particular, like you look in the West yourself, you look at it as a way to get out of the shackle of being like, taking advantage and not benefiting from, the right system in order for you to, to get out of riba and all this, and also being in control of your own, on your own money, which is crazy. And today, sometimes you're like, it's your money, but it's not your money. Even it's your money.
Yeah.
You go to the
Yeah.
bank and you apologize to ask for, can I have my money? And some people in Lebanon, they go to the level of going with a gun and say, hey, I need my money, because you
Yeah.
don't want to give it to me. So imagine the situation where human beings are getting put into. So you see this phenomenon happening in the West. In the southern nation, it's more like a necessity. They are bankless. They don't have access to a bank. Definitely, they don't have access to nothing. So for them and they're oppressed, by the way, by the colonial power, namely France, when it comes to Sahel.
Or
They are
even you
putting,
can say even if they have access to the bank, getting money in and out of the country or just using it is very difficult. I mean, I know some countries you have to pay like really a lot of money just to do a normal bank transfer or just do a normal
yeah,
cash
yeah.
withdrawal. So yeah,
Yeah, and even local transaction cannot even happen smoothly. And
yeah.
not only that, like I say, some country, their money is not even print in their own national interest, which is in the case of France CFA, which is printing the money for at least 7 nations now, or 13 nations. I'm not sure how many of them have left this. I would
I
say
mean, if you think about it, even Saudi
modern,
Arabia
yeah.
and UAE, it's the same because their money
Mm.
is pegged to the dollar. That means that every time the dollar is devalued by printing,
They have to put more money, yeah, yeah.
no,
So
no,
we
just put money
understand.
that they have to maintain the same peg. So they're not benefiting from the printing.
For sure, for sure. But
Yeah.
we have to realize as well, it's not, the beauty of what we're talking and discussing now, Muawiyah, is the power of the one-on-one, the power of the many, Finally, there's so many people who can get into it that can make it happen. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's say in Lebanon, that's what happened in Lebanon. There were so many of them getting on board, then now it's become like mainstream. Okay, same thing for Turkey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but the reality of it, it's not something easy for a head of state to jump into that. Look what happened to Libya. Look what happened anytime when you announce that you're going to depeg or you're going to get out of the dollar, you have the visit of few airplanes coming over your head, So
And
it's not
that's why
an
I like
easy.
the El Salvador's approach because they didn't say we're going to ditch the dollar and go to the Bitcoin. They just
Aywa,
said
aywa,
you
aywa.
can use it,
So,
and then that way
yeah,
it's a more natural move. You can use it if you want to, or you don't have to use it. No, it's a more natural approach
exactly.
to it. Yeah.
So you see, so this is a kind of, I think it takes a long time. I mean, not a long time, but it takes some effort. it takes a lot of lobbying at the government level, seeing an alternative, seeing like a parallel way of using the Bitcoin in order to get out little by little from this this Ribawi system. Eventually, even the non-Muslim, they are sick and tired of the dollars. This is not a Muslim issue. And when you look at actually the Bitcoin cult believer, I would say they are actually more on the non-Muslim than a Muslim, follower. You see? For them, they're like, this is it. This is, we know, because they have been like dealing with this oppression for so many years, So alhamdulillah. So this is a good discussion on
And I
that
guess the
level.
last point to mention, last little thing for people to think about is that for governments, there's actually plenty of benefits for them for adopting Bitcoin. One of the most significant ones of them would be mining. So if you used to ask me how would a government adopt Bitcoin, I would simply say start mining Bitcoin.
They do. They had they call it secret mining. There's a big example with Oman. Oman has been announcing that they have been announcing. You have Nepal. Nepal has been using their own natural resources to mine. So there's in the world. I'm sure this happened also in the Gulf country. The UAE has been big into that, even pushing into having proper mining. But yet, I'm sure there's a lot of things going on in that part of the world.
So alhamdulillah, there's a lot to be said, inshallah, but we can probably discuss it in another video, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, brother Muawiyah. This was fantastic. Usually we ask, what do people do if they want to reach out to you and learn more? So where can people find you?
I'm just easily available on Twitter or on Nostr. But if you go to Twitter, and have obviously YouTube channel, you can probably put it in the comments in the thing below. But yeah, have a YouTube channel and on Twitter, so you can probably put those links on the YouTube video.
And for the sake of our listener as well, inshallah, as we say, we respect our scholar, we respect our, ulama and everything, and we're patient in whatever they say. At the same time, I would love you to do one thing. Some of the link that you have with those great scholars that have been speaking out in favor and allowing this, Bitcoin and everything, would love to have those links to attach to the video as well, to let people also do their own research and listen to some scholars.
I've done a few videos addressing some of the concerns of the ulama. So I'll give them all, inshallah.
Yeah, that would be great to educate, as you mentioned, and starting moving into the right direction, inshallah, bi'idhnillah.
Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair, ya Muawiyah.